Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order. It is Wednesday, April 24th, 6 p.m. We have, I recognize a quorum. Actually, Councilor Minicello, who usually chairs this committee, is on his way, but he did ask that we start the meeting until he gets here. So this committee is made up of Councilor Winthrop Farwell, Councilor Jeff Thompson, and myself, Shirley Azak. Mr. Clerk, and our clerk, Mr. Rob May.
Good evening.
Good evening. We can start with item number 1.
Item number 1, a discussion on tobacco licenses. Invited, Attorney Philip Mazzarella, City Solicitor or her designation, Megan Bridges, Dr. Eno Mondesor from the Brockton, Director of the Brockton Health Department, and Attorney Resnick for the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. May. Our Solicitor Bridges did, I spoke to her earlier, and she's not able to be here this evening, but she does have a representative from her office, Attorney Verdi, is here, so if we have any questions. So I'm just going to give a little background on the reason this is before us. The tobacco regulations are set by the Board of Health, and I think the regulations were changed a number of years back, but we have come across a bit of an issue where we have empty properties that used to be convenience stores that held tobacco licenses, but that are now vacant, and the property owners aren't able to rent or lease the property without the tobacco license. So the tobacco regulations are set by the Board of Health. The reason this is before the Economic Development of the Committee of the City Council is because we've realized this is an economic issue. It affects the city, and we're here to see how we can work on looking at these regulations and possibly either revising them or what we need to do to protect the economic development of the city of Brockton. So with that said, Attorney Mazzarella, if you'd like to speak on this.
Thank you. Do we usually sit here?
Yes.
First of all, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, I wish to thank you and appreciate the opportunity to come before you and to speak. My intent is simply to give an overlay as to my experiences with the regulations, the statute before the board, and what I believe as not only a member of the bar, but a member of the commercial sector in the city of Brockton, how I believe these rules and regulations are adversely affecting the economic growth and health. Brockton waves a flag proudly of business-friendly and economic positive direction. However, the conduct and actions of what we have been doing in this realm are directly opposite. And let me start by stating that I'm well aware of the state statute giving power to a local board of health to create under Chapter 111 reasonable regulations. Now, the word reasonable in law has always been that word which is most argued about. What is reasonable? And it has to be based upon the facts and circumstances of the community that we are in and the environment within that community. Brockton, in order to acquire a tobacco license, we must appear before a Board of Health. In June of 2023, I appeared on behalf of 2 clients to the Board of Health seeking a tobacco license. Both of these clients, well-established commercial enterprises that focused in convenience store operation. In fact, they're both guests here this evening. One is Miss Vanessa Myhouse Gumbert, and as you know, she is a member of the Myhouse family, the daughter of the Myhouses that had run a very well-known chain of Christie's convenience stores for many years in high regard without violation and granted great service to the community. Behind her is Mr. Charles Hajar of the Hajar Management Company. Hajar Management owns innumerable amounts of retail properties in the city of Brockton. In fact, they are the third highest or third largest commercial taxpayer in the city. Now, I mention that only because we don't expect favor because of their conduct and reputation, but their presence demonstrates the commitment to the city of Brockton, and their holding in here to do the right thing and do the best thing and the positive things for the city. And as I said, in June, I had appeared before the Board of Health seeking a tobacco license for Ms. Gumbert's property located at Belmont Street at the fork in the road across from Shaw's Market. It's been empty for some time, and it was a 7-Eleven. It had closed without Ms. Gumbert knowing that they were closing because she had reversionary rights in the license, where they built out that store, spent an enormous amount of money specifically designed for a convenience store, so that if a tenant were to move out, they clearly want to retain the license so they can continue on with another prospective operator of the store. Once she was aware that they didn't turn the license into her company, she then sought permission before the board to have a license issued to her. That same evening, I also appeared as an applicant, was Hajar Management, and Charles Hajar was president on behalf of the company. They have a establishment on 446 East Ashland Street, which used to be a convenience store for many, many years and serviced that community. Now, we all can probably recognize the importance of convenience stores, especially where places like Stop and Shop on Belmont Street went out of business and left. People find it a lot easier to run in and out of a store to get their quart of milk and loaf of bread than they do going into supermarkets. And both of these applications were heard before a three-member board. At that time, Dr. Brophy was a member of the board. At the end of the hearing, it was represented to me that this matter would be referred for consultation with the city solicitor's office. Weeks went by and I heard nothing. I was expecting to get some resolution and determination of this. I never found what the determination was until I was told it was posted the following month or so on their website that the applications were denied. Now, I had raised the fact that there was no vote taken, and I was told, oh, we voted. But I think what the misunderstanding was, it was not a vote by way of the open meeting law. They never voted publicly, and I never received a letter outlining the basis for the denial, who voted for what. It was certainly not an intentional, surreptitious way of doing it, and I have no issue with the members of the Board of Health. Dr. Mondesir has been extremely helpful and cooperative. All of the members have treated me politely. But when this came to me, my first inclination was to do what lawyers do, and let's go sue. And I thought about it, and at minimum, I said I should at least bring an action before the State Ethics Commission or for the violation of the open meeting law. And I thought about it, and I said, I don't want to jump into a circular maze. I want to get to an end result for my clients. I'm not here to play lawyer. I'm trying to be business broker and finish it. So instead of all the legal snafus you can get into, I filed again to go before the board, and that was several months after June. I forgot what month it was. But when I appeared before the board, it was a two-member board, one with Dr. Andrade, who consistently voted against these things, and a second member who was more favorable. But as I was going through the meeting, I realized the positions of Dr. Andrade stayed the same, and I also realized one vote would kill me. And adhering to Einstein's principle that those who do the same thing the same way and expect a different result are insane. So I try to step back from getting that label on me, and I asked to withdraw, and they allowed me to withdraw. But I was a little perturbed that after 9 months, this third member was not appointed to the board. I thought I would have a full, fair hearing with 3 members, but it was the same group, so we withdrew, went back to the drawing board. What concerns me is the narrow interpretation of the ordinances and regulations whereby if a license is turned back in because a person doesn't want to continue his business, they will consider it retired. It can't resurrect and be transferred to another person. I had a situation where Savis convenience store that's been there 100 years on South Main Street had closed for a couple of months because the workers wouldn't go in. This was at the height of COVID. The license was taken from them, and they considered it retired. I went before the board. We arm wrestled over it, and the board finally conceded to give me back the license. And I said, it shouldn't be that hard. These people just closed for their own health reasons. We shouldn't have lost the license. This idea of licenses retiring and dying and never resurrecting again doesn't make any sense to me. There are several sections within the Regulation 2 of the Board of Health about under Section 11 when licenses are turned in or they can't be transferred. It makes it very difficult for a business to survive. And we have these empty stores, and they are still empty. And they have been invited by realtors to come in with these alternate plans of a rooming house, a Goodwill store. My suggestion to them, which they agreed with, I don't think that's the way to go. I don't think that's the look I want. I live in Brockton. We don't need it. We need convenience stores for the economic vitality of this city. Now, there has been some talk when I discussed this with people, well, Brookline has the same stringent relationship with their tobacco license laws. We have to realize Brockton ain't Brookline. And I don't say that negatively, but I say it as a matter of economy. In Brockton, we have a commercial tax rate over $30, and the residential is much lower, around 10. Brookline has a commercial tax rate of $16.41, and the residential is $9. They don't depend on commercial enterprises for the vitality of their economic piggy bank because what they collect in their residential tax because of the value of the homes is enough to sustain them. They could care less if they have a 5 and 10 cent a 5 and 10 cent store. They don't need it. They collect their money on residential. And I remember years ago asking Jay Condon, why do we have double the commercial rate? And he said that's because the residential section doesn't pay. So who is paying? Just recently we had an article come out in the Brockton Enterprise about Brockton has the 10th highest demand for firefighting response in a national survey. 67% of the fire trucks that leave the station are not for fires, but for medical needs, from a bloody nose to a heart attack. The commercial sector is not using that, but they're paying for it. The commercial sector doesn't use the schools, they don't use the rubbish disposal, but they pay for it. It's become so challenging that at a recent Metro South Chamber of Commerce meeting, several major commercial enterprises and their owners said to me, if we could pick our building up and move it out of the city, we would do that. That's not a good direction to be going in. And why? Because it's so difficult in all of our administrative boards to get some things done. But right now, what's before us is this issue with the issuance of tobacco license. If we can't get these stores that were designed for convenience stores, designed for commercial enterprise, to be able to have that license, no store is going to open up without a tobacco license. I represent a client in West Bridgewater that owns a lousy-looking auto repair shop. He wants to convert it to like a Cumberland Farms. We went before the board informally. They give some feedback, like a tech review. They were all for it. They loved it. And at the end of the meeting, they said, by the way, we maxed out on a tobacco license, so he's not going to be able to get a tobacco license. Well, the guy says, I got to go back to that crappy old running that particular enterprise. I understand, and I always get the lecture, the well-meaning lecture about the ills of smoking. I understand that. But there's the health issue and there's the economic survival. There is those who make the rules and those who legislate the laws. I'm here before a legislative committee to tell you that it needs a reanalysis, it needs legislation, it needs an overhaul. To add insult to injury, these have been empty so long with so much effort trying to get them filled. Ms. Gumbert received a notice from Inspectional Services that you're in violation of the vacant and abandoned building law. Now, to me, that's like a guy waiting for a bus and gets a ticket for loitering. I mean, she's doing what she can to fill the place up, and now she's got to worry about defending herself on a ticket. We need some help, members of the committee. If we want to put meaning behind the words economic development, is not this it? Because Brockton depends and survives on the health of the convenience stores that are operated properly and well throughout this city of over 100,000 people. It's not the 3 supermarkets we have, Shaw's and a Stop and Shop on the north side of town. People want, and if we don't have tobacco, you think that's going to stop smoking? Or do they just go to Stoughton, Easton, the East Bridgewaters, and Avon? That's not going to stop smoking, and if it did, they should shut it off throughout the state. I'm not a cigarette smoker. I don't believe in it either. I understand health issues, but health issues are rampant across the board. Why doesn't the Board of Health then go after artificially colored cereal? Take that off. And chocolate that contains sulfur in it. Where is that, what we call the slippery slope? When does it start and when does it stop? So I think their power, as well-meaning as it is, has surpassed that where we want to go and is acting as a gag and it's choking the survival of a lot of businesses. I was a little naive and unaware the monies that are made in tobacco, but that's what keeps these places alive and allows them to survive. Unless and until the Board of Health, who is charged with the responsibility of issuing those licenses, loosens up the strict rules and regulations they have, we're going to see some of these stores just close up, remain dormant, empty, or convert to something we don't want, but the horse is going to be out of the barn too long, and we won't be able to do anything for them. So I wanted to make the board, the committee, aware. I'm sure they've had a sense of it, but a few years back I was speaking to a member of the City Council that didn't realize the Board of Health had all that power and control over the issuance of that, and I thought I should make it known amongst all of the City Council members and as to where we stand. And again, I don't have an axe to grind. I just want to be the messenger, and I don't want to act as though I have a crystal ball, but I do see a plight of darkness and economic downturn. If we can't fix this and make it so these businesses can survive, develop, and open up. Otherwise, no one's going to do that. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them the best I can, but I have 2 major people here that are suffocating with this, and I just don't want them to take a turn in doing something under, let's say, a Dover Amendment that we don't like and can't stop, or put something up that looks like another form of a Salvation Army. We don't need that in a city where we got people sleeping under the bridges, also now trying to close down the businesses. We need some help and vitality, and I know the City Council has the talent and the ingenuity to come up with ways to do it.
Thank you, Attorney Nazarella, and thank you to Ms. Gumberg and Mr. Hajar for being here, representing the business community. And I know that there are others out there. I know there was a similar situation with some gas stations a few years back that, but the matter was taken care of. So we don't, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I don't want to see this grow. I don't like to see empty buildings in general. So that's why we're here this evening. So thank you for that presentation. I'm going to open it up to councilors. Did you want to ask Attorney Nazarella some?
Yes.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Attorney Nasrallah. Thank you for being here. I think, I pretty much concur with everything you just said tonight. Our economic base is the lifeblood of our city, and we should be doing everything possible to to encourage and make economic development and, permitting and everything that goes on through the boards through our city as business-friendly as possible within reason. But I think the issues that you bring up about the difficulty here, so I guess a few questions. I'm not completely familiar with the statute which regulates the granting of licenses when it comes to tobacco. So, number one, what are the eligibility requirements? Or I don't know if Attorney Verdi could speak to this as well, but when on the application in which you bring to the Board of Health requesting a tobacco license, what do they say as to eligibility?
I have not reviewed a license application recently. They've already been in play when I got there. Perhaps either Attorney Verdi or maybe Dr. Mondes here could respond to that, what the eligibility is. But I'm talking about entities that already had them. They got slipped away from the tenant, and they can't get them back to keep that building going on.
So would that be a new application, or are you looking, I think you said during your presentation that there was no transfer of licenses. So is this
Correct.
When somebody sells a business, that license is then retired?
That license is retired.
Okay, so then there has to be a new application to acquire a license.
Correct.
Is that not, so wouldn't that be filing a new application for a license?
That would be a new application. I understand, I believe the number is 152 licenses that are, you would max out at. I don't believe there are 152 licenses out there. I think many of them have been retired through the process, which I disagree with, and there would be a lot of available licenses if there was a little more facility in acquiring those. But some of them, like these two licenses behind me, the store went out of business or transferred or closed, and the license died. At least the owner of that property and the former landlord should be entitled to have some priority to get the license back for a business in a physical business that exists. It's not saying I want to build a new building down the street and make it a convenience store. It's already here. It's built out for that.
Right. I think if we have available licenses and the business owners are qualified, provides an application and is deemed qualified under our statutes, then almost by right, a license should be granted. If I could ask Attorney Verdi, because I'd really want to better understand what are the eligibility requirements to acquire a tobacco license in Brockton?
So just point of information, the applications are given to the business, whereas where the problem is happening is that once a business closes, that business is being notified, or the Board of Health notifies them that they no longer have the tobacco license, but the property owners are the ones that they don't have any connection to the license, so they don't know. So what's happening is they're not able to get new tenants in, because then they'd have to go through the whole process of applying. So that's where I believe the problem is when a business is losing the license. The business owners are stuck without a license because they didn't even know that they lost the license. So I think if there's a way to be able to notify the property owners when something like this happens, that may help the situation. But
well, I just kind of want to better understand what the process is here, because I'm a little confused.
Attorney Verdi, if you'd like to speak on the regulations.
So if
You want to sit in my seat, or do you want to stand? The way you hesitated, so that means you want to sit.
No, please take a seat, Attorney Verdi.
Grab you another
Or
chair.
we can roll one over. So from what I'm hearing is that when a business either shuts down, goes out of business, or something to that effect, their existing tobacco license becomes retired. Is that statutory?
So the statute allows the Board of Health to develop regulations, and it's in the regulations developed by the Board of Health here in Brockton. So under those regulations, it is Section E, goes through what an applicant has to do. They have to make sure that they don't owe any fines and are willing to comply with all of the ordinances and regulations within the city of Brockton and go through the application process. Excuse me. And it specifically says, only owners of establishments with a permanent non-mobile location in Brockton are eligible to apply for a permit and sell tobacco products. So that's where we're running into the issue of the owner of the property versus the entity that's actually selling the tobacco products. Who gets the license, who gets notice, and who holds the license? So Attorney Nazarella had mentioned this right of reversion. So certainly that's between the owner and the entity, not necessarily the city of Brockton involved in that, whether they comply with that agreement between themselves.
Okay.
So, so that's one part of it. Then the city of Brockton passed this additional regulation through the Board of Health as part of the Board of Health regulations regarding tobacco, Section 12, which is really what kind of restrains the number of permits as far as retiring them. Oh, thank you.
So are the permits, as other licenses in our city, are they connected to our population?
No.
Okay.
The regulations say point blank in Section 11 that there is no more than 152 tobacco product sales permits issued in Brockton.
Do we know currently how many tobacco licenses are issued?
I do not. Dr. Montesser might.
Do you know, Dr. Montesser, how many issues are currently issued?
It is less than 150.
If you could come to the podium, doctor, that would be great.
Is it much less, or can you give me a ballpark on the number?
We're probably in the 30, 33, 36 range. This is a document that around 2018 that came before, I believe, don't get me, don't end me on that, but around 2018 to 2019, there was a resolution that was taken and that was visited by the body here and the solicitor then. There was a cap put on the number of licenses that the city would issue at any given time.
And what's that number?
At that particular time, it was 152.
Okay.
The language said there that any permit that was not reissued, that license would retire and would not be replaced, because there was a cap to reduce the number of 152 down to 123 or so.
Okay, so there was an expectation at 153 to reduce it down to some other manageable number.
So in the regulations, Section 11 says that 152 number. And then in May of 2019, they added Section 12, which is the part that's talking about them retiring. The Board of Health may vote to reissue said permit to a different applicant, which is the owner or operator of a new retail establishment. So the language of may being in there gives the Board of Health the power to not necessarily reissue a permit, essentially reducing the permits once they are retired.
Right, but it seems like from just this discussion, and I wasn't on the council in May of 19, or was I?
For point of information, this was written by the board of the Board of
Okay.
Health. It came just as before the council, we really just reviewed it. We
Okay.
didn't have to vote on it. This is their law
Okay.
created by the Board of Health.
Okay, so then my understanding is that at some point we had 152 licenses. The Board of Health decided that maybe 123 was more appropriate for the city. Therefore, enacting the reversion language with the intent to reduce as these licenses are turned in, to reduce them down to that 123 number. Am I in the ballpark here, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if there was necessarily a set number at 123.
Oh.
It was just the idea of reducing them as shops closed and licenses were retired.
Okay. So I guess, I mean, if we're at 33 licenses, we're nowhere near what could be considered an oversaturation of the market in which the Board of Health was maybe looking to reduce to. We're at, I mean, from that 153 number, which is the only number on the books, right? That's the only number that's cited, that we're allowed, 153, and we've got 33. My math's no good, but what's about 20%? 20% of the allowable licenses are issued, and then we're looking to further, the Board of Health would like to further reduce that number. Do you have a number in mind of what you would like to see as the number of licenses? Would it be the Board of Health's intent to not reissue any retired license?
Well, as the language in that particular document, I'll be glad to, I didn't bring the copy with me because I was invited to this expecting to get a letter stating what I need to bring but I didn't have that. So I have the document, I could bring it. But I believe that some of the individuals present in this room are familiar with the language in there. And so it looked up the number of licenses that were available then or that were issued, and then that number was supposed to be decreased by any number of licenses that did not reissue from that point.
So you're saying that every license that was retired that then came before you for a request for reissuance, your policy would be not to issue it so that the overall number of licenses are reduced?
Yes, because that's the understanding, and that's what the language is at that. And the board members of the Board of Health also, they are the one that participated in the creation of that document before I came in, and so they envisioned the cap and the language that was appropriate for that time, so that any license that were not reissued, they would retire.
Would the logical conclusion of that policy be that eventually every tobacco license in Brockton would eventually be retired and no longer available to any business in Brockton?
Would you rephrase that again?
I'm saying if your policy is not to reissue any retired license, would not the logical conclusion of that policy be that eventually every tobacco license in Brockton would be retired?
I don't think so, because there is a line also within that document that envision around 120 or so to 132. So
right,
which means that it would never drop to zero, to null, or not to zero, because the cap allows for the decrease, but never to come to zero.
Okay, but we're currently at 30 to 36 licenses issued.
Correct.
We had a proposed cap of 153. Why are we not, I mean, if we're 20% of the issued, of the available license issued, why are we reducing it? Why are we not allowing these businesses to reacquire licenses that already existed in the existing location to continue, that type of business in that location? Like, why are we retiring licenses? If we had 150 on the street and we thought that 123 was more reasonable, I think I could wrap my mind around that. But when we're at 35 and we're continuing to reduce, I mean, I just don't see the logic between of that policy.
Okay. May I?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I think the way to go about this, I think the new board of directors, we're down to 2 members, and the nominations are made by the mayor and approved by the city council. And so when we do bring to the board the additional member, or if the power that be wish to move forward with the two members, I think they would have to revisit that because it's not within my jurisdiction, my purview, my authority as the director.
I understand.
I am an agent. So which means that because there is a line also that says there will be no new license reissued.
There's a line within your,
Yes, within
the policy that says no new licenses shall be issued.
Correct. And then the issue of transferring licenses, it has a caveat to it. First of all, the license issued to the owner of the retail store, not to the landlord, so that the license belongs to the owner,
Proprietor of the business, right.
Which means that that's his or hers. And so therefore, if the person did not renew that license or phases out of the business, then that make a no room for, would be a no license. But then you have the language that says no license because it looks to decrease the number of licenses within the city of Brockton.
Yeah, so I mean, that essentially, what we're doing is if somebody wants to sell their business, they're selling basically a worthless asset because there can be no transfer of the license, which keeps their business in operation. So we're essentially, we're making worthless everybody's tobacco business in Brockton because they have no ability to sell. That cannot be sustained. We cannot continue to allow that to happen. So, Attorney Verdi, are these policies amendable by ordinance, or is this strictly something within the purview of the Board of Health?
So the Massachusetts statute allows the Board of Health to develop regulations. Ms. Nazarella had mentioned earlier, it's reasonable regulations for the health. And the regulations are not by ordinance. So as far as creating a new ordinance, certainly City Council can approve any kind of ordinance. Whether that can supersede the regulations that are allowed to be made per Massachusetts statute, that's questionable.
Understood. So the statute grants the Board of Health the authority to make these regulations, and those regulations are generally within their purview and not really amendable by the City Council. So what about granting the Board of Health this authority? Is that also statutory where the tobacco licenses are under the purview of the Board of Health, or is that something, can we as a City Council say we want the tobacco license authority vested in, say, our licensing commission?
So point of information, I have it in front of me. It's
Okay.
by the state. Because it's a health issue, it is directly with the Board of Health. We can't, there's nothing, the City Council can't create an ordinance that oversees them. But what we can do is work with the Board of Health, which is only a 2-member person, which is causing a lot of issues. And the reason for that is we're transitioning to a Department of Public Health, but we've been doing that for 2 years. That's why there hasn't been a third person appointed. But I did speak to the mayor and mention that it's important that we get a third person in there in the meantime. So we can bring the actual board and work with them to have them re-look at these regulations, and maybe they can make amendments, they can make changes, so they can. This is their law, these are their regulations, they can change them. We can't make them, but maybe if they're in this forum and they realize the importance of this, they can change them.
I appreciate that.
The statute does provide specifics on how the Board of Health can amend the regulations.
Okay, so they're amendable, like any policy, it can be amended. And so I guess lastly, does our new new home rule petition creating a Health and Human Services Department. How does that affect the Board of Health and its operation within the context of these tobacco licenses?
So the way that other municipalities have dealt with it is any regulation, statutory or otherwise, that references the Board of Health is kind of transferred to the Department of Health. So the state statute would just transfer the authority to the Health Department versus the Board of Health.
Okay, so it would be then up to whoever we appoint as the director, or would that, but Dr. Montesir, you would still be the department head of the Board of Health, so then the authority would vest in the director because there would no longer be a board, correct?
Right, so it depends on how the Health Department is set up and who's appointed and how many positions. And my understanding at this point is there is going to be one person appointed, but I do not know the answer to that.
Right, appointed as kind of the director of the commissioner of the, but then the department heads answering underneath that commissioner, kind of like how we have our, the DPW set up.
Yeah.
So then we would say that whatever power was vested in the board would then be invested in the commissioner and potentially the department head of the Board of Health, or what would now be, I don't know if we're going to still call it the Board of Health, but the Health Department. Okay, understood. I think we have some work to do. I think the Board of Health should know what the city's policy preferences are in this regard. I think the appointment of another member who understands what our policy preferences are, I can completely understand that the Board of Health is against what we all know is to be a cancer risk, right? A high cancer risk. I understand why the Board of Health would be hesitant to allow licenses that proposes a health risk to the community. But you know, we're also, as stated by Attorney Nessarella, we're also a business, you know, we're also in the business of business. And I think a policy that it just kind of is on autopilot, that just retires every license that comes before it, is creating a huge economic disadvantage. And like I said, making a business worthless because they can't sell because their license is then invalid, and then the value of their business is gone. So I don't like that we're putting businesses in this position, and whatever this commission or this board and council can do to try to rectify the situation, we should do so with haste. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In the meantime, Chairman Accello is here, so did you want to take
I
over?
just had a couple questions.
Okay.
Doctor, how are you tonight? Pleased. So when is the last time that the members actually had a vote or discussed this policy? Has it been a recent agenda item on their?
This vote happened to create that document and voted on it before 2019. I mean, somewhere at 2019, and I was nominated to the department in 2020. So the vote that created that document that we use now as the constitution or the ordinance that we go by was created by that board.
But that document clearly states that it wanted to reduce the licenses down to a manageable number.
Yes, from
152
to somewhere around one.
Right.
I think it's supposed to say around 130 some.
Right. So I guess my question is, where and when and how did the policy, I guess, change or take on a legs of its own where it's now at 30-something licenses? I mean, clearly they wanted to reduce it to 100 and something, right? 100 and...
Yes, I did not bring a copy for you because I was not made aware what I needed doing. I was invited to a meeting.
Sure, oh, sure.
Economic development.
Right.
but I'm in the business of helping in the health arena. Now, I can understand the conjunction between health and businesses,
Right, sure.
but I can make a copy available. I can bring it to the council. So in this document also, it says that the board of directors, before they made the decision, they visited other municipalities and understand the number of licenses per capita. Mm-hmm. And so they looked and realized that for the population in Brockton, the number of licenses were somewhat incompatible or over what some other same-size cities had. And so therefore they decided, and so that's what I inherited, and so that's what we go by. So basically, from 153 license around 2018 that was there, it was considered that they would reduce it to some 130 or so. So that's where we are.
But there's only 30-something licenses now.
100.
There's only 35 licenses?
No, it's. I think right now we are at 133.
Well,
it could be between.
133.
In fact, I don't know what happened. I don't know the total number right now because the license have been reissued by Department of Inspectional Services.
I'm sorry.
In recent months, so I don't know. There may be no licenses that I'm not aware of.
I thought I heard you say it was down to 30 to 35.
No, 130 something.
Okay, that's what I was operating on too,
I think he
35.
meant to say it was decreased by 30 licenses from the 152.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No,
I was taking it there's only 35
I'll speak for
licenses
myself.
from 150
Right.
something.
Yeah, it was at 152 or so when the document was created. So presently, it is in the range of 130 plus.
Okay, 130 plus. So we're down, so the intent was 150, so we're down about 20 or so licenses, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I guess, so if the intent was 153, 152, why aren't we complying with the intent?
Because within the language that was accepted then, 2018, it was said that any license that was, they want to reduce the number, they will not increase it, they will not go over what existed then, the number of licenses, and any license that expired, that the owners did not renew them, they would retire. That's the language.
I guess that, but in a way, that does conflict with the intent of the number. I mean, the number they wanted was about 150, let's just 152. So we're...
In other words, if I may clarify, it was at 152, but they wanted to reduce it, not to keep it at that number, because the board of directors over the Board of Health thought that that number was too high as it relates to the demographic of the city of Brockton. And so therefore, the intention of the language in there was to reduce it from that number, 152, to a lesser number.
So,
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
if I may, I can just read straight out of the regulations. This is Section 11, Paragraph A. At any time, there shall be no more than 152 tobacco product sales permits issued in Brockton, reduced by the number of permits not renewed pursuant to subsection B below. Subsection B, as of September 30th, 2016, any permit not renewed, either because a retailer no longer sells tobacco products as defined herein, or because a retailer closes the retail business, shall be returned to the Brockton Board of Health and shall be permanently retired by the Board of Health, and the total allowable number of tobacco sales product sales permits under paragraph 11A shall be reduced by the number of the retired permits. So that's the
Continuous reduction.
language that is at issue.
Seems arbitrary to me.
Well, if I may, it also seems contradictory to common sense. If a retailer is a tenant of one of these, Hajar Management or My House, that built out the store and has this big conglomerate for them to work, and that lessee tenant decides to leave, that means the license is gone. What does that landlord do? Common sense would dictate there would be a mechanism within these rules and regulations to reissue as a preferential treatment to that person that's housing this type of business. You know, and as you know, in law, we have the black letter law. We also have the thing called equity, which is to address those things that would create fairness to what the black letter law doesn't do. And a judge or whoever administers the law, the Court of Chancery years ago, can infuse equity fairness so you have an outcome that works. We don't have an outcome that works. Something like a grant to a lessor who's going to put in, not something different, but another convenience store operator would make sense and continue the vitality of that entity as opposed to severing it and leaving it an empty store.
No, absolutely. If the intent was to turn a convenience shop into a coin-operated laundry mat, okay, that makes sense.
Fine.
Take back the license. But right, if it's built out for a convenience store and is going to be sold to another convenience store operator, then it makes no sense to retire that license.
So, and that was the amendment that I had mentioned earlier, allowing the Board of Health to reissue the permit to a different applicant who is an owner or operator of a new retail establishment. So the Board of Health regulations do allow for that kind of approval, essentially unretiring the permit for that business.
So that, okay, so
That amendment was put into place in around May 2019.
So there
Okay.
is discretion.
Yes.
There are also some, excuse me, just one final point, very surreptitious types of tenants on these chain stores, let's say, not at Cumberland Farms, but there are some chain stores, I don't want to mention them, they'll be a lessee, and they have another store 2 miles down the street. They're closing, but they'll hold on to the license and not turn it until it dies, so somebody else can't come in and compete with their other store down the street. That is unfair, and that's what also results in reducing license that shouldn't be reduced. That lessor, building owner, should be able to get that license and use it for another like-kind business.
so they're holding on to a license even though they're not operating?
Correct.
And how long can they hold on to that license for?
Until they
Continuously?
leave, under these rules, the Board of Health would consider it retired because it's not operating, the store's closed. And they're closing intentionally to kill the competition. That's not the way it should work.
Right. Okay.
Yep, thank you. So it's obvious that there's some work that needs to be done in conversation with certainly the members of the board.
Right, because I think from listening to what's being said, the flexibility is within the policy to allow for a transfer or at least a reacquisition of a license if there's a continuity of purpose for the location, right? I mean, if it's going from one convenience store owner to another convenience store owner, then the policy does allow for the transfer, or if not transfer, reacquisition, or whatever you want to call it. It sounds like the Board of Health is just not, doing that. And so, I mean, I don't know, what can we do about that?
I think we can have a conversation.
Well,
and,
right.
Discuss with the members, what we're hearing from our constituents and how it's putting our constituents and Brocktonian business owners, behind the 8 ball with regard to competition, and
Sounds like a perfect resolve to me.
yeah, correct. But, look, we all know that, smoking is not a good thing. We know that. However, it's a legal product, it's a legal product, and if this is, you have the right to smoke. You don't have the right. My pet peeve is when I see cigarettes being flicked out of a car and throw it on the streets, but that's another issue altogether. But, and when the beach turns into your personal ashtray, and I like to go to the beach, and I don't like seeing the cigarettes around on the beach, but that's a different conversation.
Keep Brockton beautiful day, May 18th.
Exactly. So, but, this is, people like to pick on people that like to smoke. That's a reality. That is. So, the discretion is there in terms of a conversation, in terms of the intent, the number of licenses. So we're going to have that conversation, and invite the members for a discussion, and talk about, implementing the policy that it was originally set for, which was a certain number, and that number has been reduced, and, discuss what the effect has been on certain, business people who are, who obviously have an interest, and that's why they're here, and that's why it's on the agenda. There's enough people that are concerned about this, and, it's a legal product, and until it's not a legal product, then,
We should be in the business of selling it. I agree.
The only thing I would ask in my parting salvo here is that I am comfortable there's a clear understanding by the members on that side of the board, and I know although Councilor Farwell has been unusually silent, he has expressed in the
I
past.
can't compete.
He's expressed a very articulated,
Oh, yeah.
common sense position in this. The only concern I think the people on this side have is that we feel like we are in the Titanic waiting for those rowboats to come. I know the process takes time, the conversations take time, but I'm just hoping we could move with as most expediency as municipal government will allow to help these people out who are on the verge of either, again, closing doors permanently or doing something with that building we don't want them to do. I said before Councilor Minicello got here, we don't need another Goodwill or rooming house. We need a business for the economic growth and survival of this community.
Does the Board of Health policy allow for a rehearing of a denied petition?
Well, they had granted me one, and I don't know if it's because they like me or that's their policy, but during the midst, that's the one I said, I could see it going the same way the first one did, and I was allowed to withdraw because I didn't want to go through a redo on it.
Okay, understood.
The floor is now with Councilor Farwell.
And, Mr. Chairman, you know how dangerous that is because I always speak exactly what's on my mind. Someone made a decision that they wanted to do away with smoking in Brockton. That's clearly why that was written the way it was. I was going to ask our attorney from the law department, was there a limit on the time within which a license could be renewed? Could you come back? Because you didn't read anything about that, and that intrigued me a little bit.
So, yes, actually, that is in here, I just didn't read it. No permit renewal will be denied based on the requirements. Any permit holder who has failed to renew his or her permit within 30 days of expiration will be treated as a first-time permit applicant. So that's one time frame in there. A newcomer or a new owner has 60 days.
Okay. Well, colleagues, I never smoked. I agree with everything that's been said about the dangers of smoking. But it's perfectly absurd for us to think that we're going to prevent smoking by limiting licenses when all you have to do is drive to another town. If this were a statewide ban, I could see where there might be some serious medical benefits to it, but unless someone's living under a rock, this city needs economic development. We have to expand the tax base, the commercial tax base. Otherwise, we continue to shift the burden to homeowners. What I would suggest to my colleague, Councilor Thompson, is forget the resolve, forget the niceties of trying to get the Board of Health to do what we want them to do. They're an unelected board, basically not responsible to anyone, not responsible to us. I would do a home rule petition that basically says, notwithstanding any special or general law to the contrary or any ordinance or regulation, the city council may determine the number of licenses to sell cigarettes in the city of Brockton. Keep it just clean, put the burden on us. We're elected, all 11 of us, to represent the community and to listen. And I think that needs to be done sooner rather than later because we have a lot of vacant properties that I think could be the genesis of jobs and economic development and new business coming into the community, and I know you've always been a champion of that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that as an ultimate fix, but we all know home rule petition can take 12, 18 months to process.
Yep.
And so, if that's the will of the council, and I think we should have a discussion regarding that, and that we would at a Finance Committee meeting. But in the meantime, I think lobbying the Board of Health to try to revisit their policy and understand a little bit of the nuance of a continuing business, I think that should be the first, that's the more quick acting resolution with the long-term goal of maybe removing it from the Board of Health's purview altogether.
Well, and just in response to that, that will require them to amend their current regulations if we lobby them and they change their mind. The other thing that really bothers me is that we worked very hard to set up a Department of Health and Human Services. We even got a special law passed by the legislature allowing someone to head that department who does not have to be a doctor. And it sits there and it's not being used, and frankly, I'd be against appointing another member of the Board of Health. I think we need to make a determination, are we going to have that new department or aren't we? If we aren't, then let's file an ordinance and do away with it and go back to just having a 3-person Board of Health, which I don't favor, but something's got to get things moving.
But
I get very impatient with the pace of things in Brockton.
But that's an executive decision, right? The mayor is the one who would.
It is now because
Yeah,
we've passed the
because we've
ordinance and
done,
he
right,
has the
we've,
authority.
right.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, but if we passed it, and are you saying, because I didn't know, the home rule petition was accepted, and so then,
Representative Cassidy shepherded that through the legislature, and it was modeled after other communities so that
Right.
we weren't wedded to having an MD, a medical doctor.
right, no,
in the community.
I remember those conversations vividly. So by operation of law, why is that not now in effect? Like, if the home rule petition was enacted, is that now what's in effect in Brockton?
Not necessarily, because the positions aren't filled. So we're in that transition.
So it doesn't really become enacted until we appoint a commissioner?
Yeah, until we can actually exercise the new rule.
Okay, I mean, because that right there, if we do that, then now the Board of Health goes away, right?
Yes, you'd still have a health department.
A health
but you'd
department.
have a Board of Health. It also merged a couple of other departments.
Right.
Council on Aging, and it might have been the Mayor's Youth Council. I'd
Right,
have to
right,
take a look
right,
at it.
right.
But the intent was to have a cohesive unit of departments or commissions that would provide the type of services that are needed and also hopefully qualify us for some grants.
Right.
Because we'd have a comprehensive Department of Health and Human Services. So we've got some work to do.
Right, so that's a conversation with the mayor.
Councilor Azak.
Thank you. So I agree with my colleagues, but I also agree with Attorney Nezarella. We don't want the Titanic to sink and have everybody wait for the little towboat. So I really think we need this, and this is the reason we're here this evening, is we need the sense of urgency. We need to work with the board. We need to figure out what's happening. I mean, it would be great if a home rule petition moved a little quicker, but we all know it takes time. So I want to see this done yesterday. So we'll work
About
together.
having another meeting, inviting the members to the next.
So I think we can motion to just take them straight to the Finance Committee and work with the attorneys to help them maybe bring in some wording. I don't know, I'm figuring our law department helped them. Attorney Nezarella, you were the solicitor at the time. Did the law department work with the Board of Health to help them come up with the wording?
I don't recall that.
Okay, because I know as counselors, we were just given copies just as a formality. We didn't really, we had no say in the wording. So I think we need to work with them. So I'd like to motion to, first of all, to have them come before the city, the Finance Committee, speak to them, have it in an open forum, and take it from there, because...
Is this board allowed to refer?
I'm sorry?
Are we allowed to refer?
So we can't refer from committee to committee, but, so we'll send it back
Well, it says
to
a
the
draft
city.
of resolve, and
Yeah,
then
well-
have it read and
So-
referred.
Right.
Okay.
So we'll send it back,
Yeah.
because I motion to send this favorably back to the full city council in hopes that a resolve will be put together to invite the 2 Board of Health members and the director to come before us so we can work on a solution.
Second.
Second that.
All in favor? Seeing it, no one opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Nasrallah.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.
Appreciate it.
How we doing?
Have a good evening. Okay,
Item 2 on the agenda is a discussion regarding the redevelopment of Timeless Antiques at 1208 Belmont Street.
okay, anyone from Timeless Antiques?
Oh, invited Mr. Steve Adams and Mr. Paul Pugh.
Good evening, gentlemen, how are you?
Well, thanks. How are you? I'm Steve Adams. That's Paul Prue.
Paul Prue.
We
Welcome.
represent the owners of 1208 Belmont Street, doing business as Timeless Antiques. That property has 2 buildings, one 1208 Belmont, the other is 149 Mill Street. Formerly, it was a real estate office. It's now vacant. The property as a whole is just over an acre, and it is for sale as we speak.
In what capacity do you represent Timeless Antiques? Are you brokers, are you
Yeah.
attorneys?
I'm the attorney firm.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul's the attorney, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm,
Yeah, that's all right. And so we're here tonight, really, and Paul will take over. He's going to be a lot better at this than I am. We're here tonight to see if currently it's C5 zoned, which is a little bit restrictive when you're selling a business. Typically, and I have copies of that. If you want me to, can I bring those up to you guys? And also the property.
I'll grab them.
Yeah, no way. I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up. And so we're here to see if, there is a possibility for, is it amendable for something to be added to that C5 zoning? There is a lot of interest in that property. However, not from the medical building, dentist, that type of business, getting a lot of interest. Sure, you got it. With retail and restaurant businesses calling me. And so we're kind of handcuffed with the zoning as it is. So we just want to see what the temperature of the city is for that spot. Possibly to, like I say, make a couple of changes to that zoning so that this property can be moved. And we're just, whatever it takes to work with the city, the abutters, the neighborhood, we're willing to do.
We're trying to make this a win-win for the city of Brockton. We're trying to bring in tax revenue. We're trying to make it more attractive for folks who are interested in developing the corner there. It's a fantastic corner. I think we're mindful of the fact that there's a neighborhood behind it. I think anything that could be conditioned associated with, exiting or the curb cuts, I think is important, and I think everybody understands that. I don't think that a curb cut onto 24 is going to be a very viable alternative as it exists presently. But the access to that location, and I don't think it would change under any scenario, is through the back, Mill Street extension. So nobody is going in and off of Belmont Street. So I think that's one problem that can be alleviated. I think the issue is how do we get to the point where you do it through a zoning change that's going to take a while, and is there an appetite for it? You do it through a variance, and I think there may not be an appetite for that. You can do a use variance, but, you have to get the zoning board to approve that. And that might not be that might not appeal to those folks. So I think we're kind of painted into a corner with the C5 jurisdictions, the things that they will allow. Now, it's an easy thing to say, and we would have been teed up for the Doc in the Box, the minute clinics, that there's 2 of them now within 300 yards of there. So that opportunity is gone, and everything else seems to be not viable. We're looking for something that can be a win-win for the city. That's why we're here. We're really trying to find out what's the economic barometer. How can we do a win-win? Okay, nobody's naive here. Everybody understands there's a profit motive associated with this for the sellers, but by the same token, this could be a win-win for Brockton, too. If it sits fallow, and that's basically what's happening, the nature of the business has changed. Timeless Antiques does a lot of collectibles and things of that nature. And the nature of the business really changed during COVID. It went more online, so they don't need the building anymore. They've had a lot of interest in that corner, but every single time we have to turn them away because it just doesn't fit within the zoning. And if we were to approach it, for housing, we don't fit the FARs or the parking requirements are too restrictive, and then you have to go for variances and things of that nature. So we're just trying to understand what the temperature of you folks are for a change and how we can best and most quickly affect that, because we want to see it be a win-win for both sides at this point.
Councilor Razak.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and I know the reason they're here this evening is because they want to work with the city, and I know they had proposed to possibly meet individually with councilors, but I felt, and I spoke with Councilor Farwell, and we felt this is a good forum to get at least a few councilors at a time, and we could, start here and then see where we're going to go. So with C5, I know that not this property, but across the street took a lot of heat from the community, and, I mean, they're never going to let the neighbors, I should say, had a big issue with I think, was it MedTech or something, Mr. May, that was going to go across, and there was a big, huge uproar. It was a few years ago, right before the Timeless Antiques building.
There has always been a uproar about the property and the reuse of the property.
Even residential, there was a lot of, I know, it was very heated, and residents need to understand that this is prime real estate. People, I mean, did you want, I just saw fingers go up.
I have a recommendation,
so I just wanted
but I don't want to jump in.
The reason we're here is to try to find a solution. I know the mayor supports it as well. I've spoken to him, about, that you're willing to talk to the city to see what we can do. I know that amending the map, Mr. May has, he's the right person to really work with us on trying to find a solution. I just have one quick question. I know that you've brought up you've had some interest in the property. Can you give us an idea of what types of businesses have been interested?
So I have had,
Just be general, because
Yeah.
we have NDAs, we have to be careful.
sit-down restaurants.
Okay.
Some retail people have come forward. Yeah.
Okay. Very
Not
good.
some, many.
You've had many, so there is interest in,
There's extraordinary interest in that corner.
Yeah.
It's an amazing corner.
It is.
And it's high trafficked. It gets a lot of economic boom from Easton, folks going into Boston. into
Stonehill
Brockton.
College,
Stonehill,
which
right.
cranked it up to Division I, so there's a lot of, there's more traffic there. Yeah, so I would just say that there's been a tremendous amount of interest for a retail restaurant, that type of thing, yeah.
I'm all set, Council. I know that our chair, I'm sorry, our clerk,
Nobody.
Mr. May, had something to suggest, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, so I didn't know.
If it's appropriate.
Absolutely.
Some of you may know that entire corner is Zone C5, so all the single-family homes that are over there are also Zone C5. It would make sense with, as messed up as our zoning is at the moment, that the council would consider a map amendment that would then take any redevelopment impetus away from the Zoning Board of Appeals and put it back into your hands by zoning it correctly for the use that we want as a city.
Right. I think that's entirely appropriate. My question is, so this is currently C5, but it's a current retail use that's not under our current C5 zone as it is. So was this already a map amendment to some previous map?
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was originally, what, C2 or maybe even residential, or
Exactly right, C2.
Yes.
it was C2? Then it got,
Years ago, it became C5.
when did it become C5, do we know? What?
Early 22.
Yeah.
Oh, when the,
You did that.
okay, but I didn't know that was existing C5, though.
So it's your fault we're here.
Yeah. Well, we just amended the existing C5s.
Right,
We
that's
did
all
it.
you did,
22.
right? You didn't segregate this parcel.
Right.
Right.
When did that happen?
It was at least 20 years ago
Okay,
that this happened.
okay.
I can get the exact date if.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering how, I mean, obviously, this is a retail shop. And it's been there forever, timeless, honestly. It was originally designated retail, then at some point it became C5, and now it's, now that C5 zone is burdening what initially was envisioned as a retail location. I mean, it's in a prime retail location, and we just got done talking about the necessity of expanding our commercial base, and what a great opportunity to do so. And so that would be a C2, essentially, do a map amendment from C5 to C2. And we could just essentially, since this all residential, so we wouldn't even touch that. We would just,
You would rezone that for residential.
residential, just go, right, why not do that?
Get it all done.
Right. That makes sense. And I think that's something the city council should seriously consider. This is what, Ward 3?
Ward 3, yeah, right.
Oh, so that, I mean, yeah. Then I think a conversation with Councilor Griffin would be appropriate, but I know he is as pro-business on the council as there exists, so I wouldn't see any
So I
really
mentioned this
pushback.
to him.
Yeah.
So the conversation started back before the election, and that's when we met. I met with Attorney Prue and Steve. Sorry. And Steve Adams, sorry. And so we met, and we started speaking about this possibility. They wanted to reach out at the time. Councilor D'Agostino had said he wasn't going up for re-election. I did speak to him about this, and I did mention something to Councilor Griffin. So I was going to invite him this evening, but they would have been, I didn't.
A quorum, a city council
So I
quorum.
I didn't realize that Councilor Texera wasn't going to be here, so, but I did mention it. So we're just trying to find something that, that will benefit the city.
What's this property? Do you have this map, right, Rob? What's this 149 property on Liberty Street? Is that residential, or is that also commercial?
That is
Mill
also
Street.
C5.
That's Mills.
Mill?
Yeah.
It's Mill Street.
149, that's Mill?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Mill wraps around. Is that residential, is that commercial? What is that? That's commercial as well?
C5.
Is that, what is that currently operating as? I'm not in this.
Real estate office until a couple months ago. Michael Hakel.
Michael Heichel.
Oh, Mike, okay.
Yeah.
It's vacant at the moment, I think.
And that's currently within the C5, right?
Yes.
Like a C5 use, right? A real estate,
Office is a C5.
a professional office would be C5?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Correct.
I don't see any problem with it, and I think, we just have to get Councilor Griffin into the conversation and work this process forward.
Councilor Farwell, would you like to?
Well, I would just say that obviously we'd have to have a resident meeting because you have residential here. This is one of the most dangerous intersections in the state, if I'm right.
I think you are right.
This map shows Mill Street coming out onto, unless I'm, is
No, Mill Street
Isn't that a
doesn't-
dead end?
Yeah, there
I
is
think
a
it's
dead end, right? No?
I think that's a dead end on, you come up
Yes, there
Liberty
is.
Street, turn left on Mill Street
Connector.
connector, but I think that's a dead end street on there, isn't that, Mr. May?
It has been, it is still public right-of-way, but it's owned by because it's owned by the city of Brockton, so the GIS map has not been
Gotcha.
re-altered because it's still right-of-way, it's just not used.
And we certainly would condition anything on never using that, even though it could still be activated in some regard. but,
I'm not sure the state would let you do it
Yeah,
anyway.
I don't think so either, you know.
Point of information, the Traffic Commission's been out there, and I think Mr. May the state is looking at that intersection, and for years now. I think
the
it's
tip?
coming up in
They are,
25.
yes, sir.
They're on tip?
They're doing the design studies now.
Okay.
And that'll take a lot longer than a home rule petition, by the way. They're about 10 years. A question to you, Mr. May. Once we decide to do something, rather than throw this open to just a C2, maybe an overlay district where you'd specify exactly what was going there, or?
It is possible to create an overlay district for a couple of parcels
Yeah.
and be very, very specific about what you're getting.
Yeah.
We're looking at that in another location here in Brockton, where we're negotiating a deal with the developer, and then we enter into an agreement that it is contractual that if we change our zoning, you do this, otherwise it goes back.
Yeah, I'm thinking that might alleviate fears that there are so many things that can go into a C2, but.
Correct.
There's a lot of obnoxious uses that we probably don't want in there under the C2.
We're willing to listen to all of that. Those
Okay.
conditions are fine with us, even contractually. I think we don't want to be burdened by the fear that there's going to be another Cumberland Farms going in there. And I think that everybody recoiled when they saw the size of it. I mean, I did. But I also think you have to rationalize one thing. That's a divided highway. What happens on that side of the highway is not what's happening on the other side of the highway. And I think the fact that the entry onto Belmont Street and thus 24, because remember we're going on to 24, we would condition it upon not driving onto Belmont Street, and you still come out to Mill Street and all of that. So I don't think you're adding any more traffic to the intersection by going that way.
No, unless the traffic came out of whatever you were locating there and then decided to go on to Belmont Street eastbound or westbound.
Yeah, but you'd still be coming up to the intersection
Yes,
anyway
yeah.
and feeding onto the intersection.
Yeah, you'd be
There's really-
coming out onto Pearl Street.
Yeah, be no more than probably,
Yeah.
certainly Liberty Street has the medical facilities, and that's far busier than this would ever be.
Where are the current curb cuts? Are they on Belmont?
It's interesting. Yeah, one of them is actually on Belmont.
Yeah.
And it's kind of roped off.
Okay.
I don't think it's ever been abandoned, and it's certainly, I don't think personally, I'm probably bidding against myself, but I don't think it's safe. I mean, somebody going through that intersection, it is dangerous, at a high speed, isn't going to stop for somebody who's just pulling out of out of the timeless antiques, or anything that's going to.
Is there an island there, to my memory? Is there an island on?
That's
It's a
city
divided
property.
highway.
Divided, okay, yeah,
It's a right turn only.
right, okay.
But you have cars that are coming very quick
Oh, yeah.
from Easton.
Trying to beat that
from,
light.
In front of Brax and all that,
Right.
trying to make the light. You have a lot of tractor trailers and things.
Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with council. I would not want to have the ingress or egress on that Belmont Street side. I would much prefer the way it is now, going in through the Mill Street connector. To me, it makes public safety sense, and to me.
Point of information also?
Sure.
That is also state layout, so MassDOT would have to approve any changes of curb cuts on that street,
On Mill Street?
on Belmont Ave.
Even in
Or Belmont
abandonment?
Street,
Right now, there is one, correct?
correct.
Yeah.
So we'd be abandoning it. We could voluntarily abandon it.
That's fine.
That's true.
But adding a new one or changing it would require Mass DOT.
I mean, I would think, I think just common sense tells you that could be a real tragedy.
Yeah.
A real dangerous situation, you know.
For sure.
You know,
Given the accidents we've had in this city recently,
Are you kidding me?
every area is
But,
potentially dangerous.
but people aren't going as fast as they are on Mill Street, like they are on
Right,
Belmont
no,
Street.
no.
That is a busy intersection, and people do try to zip through to get onto the highway, you know. So, any other comments from any of the members?
No, I just think this is a good idea, and I think we should work on
this
it
is a
and
very- a good
and
meeting.
activate this
Yeah,
property.
Yeah. I really do feel that this is right for commercial use, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't, look, we can't dictate what you do, and we certainly aren't doing that, but I just think that this is a great opportunity to put something in, because it is a very good location, you know, both because of access to 24, you know, and where it is. There's a lot of successful businesses, you know, in that area, obviously. You know,
Mr. Chairman, would you support a motion to refer this to the Ward 3 Counselor and to Mr. May, and then have it returned to us at the appropriate time, because we're allowed to meet whenever we need to, so.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Could we ask Mr. May to draft that amended map?
Just for point of information, are these lots on Shields Ave, are these all residential lots?
They are.
Yes, they are.
They all are residential?
They're a Zone C5.
C5.
Oh, yeah.
I'll change it.
Right. If that new map could include, you know, what.
Yes, sir.
The residential and all of that, and at least we can start working from a plan.
And just a suggestion, whatever goes in, you know, there should be some thought, you know, as to an adequate, you know, buffer, either vegetation or fence or combination, so that, you know, the neighborhood
All of that's
has as minimal impact.
Yeah.
And, you know, to me, being a good neighbor goes a long way, you know, in terms of people coming to these meetings and being upset, as opposed to people coming to the meetings and saying, these people are working with us.
And there are sound barriers now that go up, whether you're on Route 24, you'll see them all the time now. And we, again, with working with the city, we're trying to get to that point where we're going to be good neighbors regardless of what use it's going to be, so.
Right. I believe our ordinances requires screening in between commercial and residential zones, so it's already in the ordinance.
All right, so a motion to refer this to the Ward 3 Counselor, and
Second.
to have Mr. May prepare the appropriate draft map, and to return to this committee at the appropriate time.
Yes, sir.
Second?
All in favor? Seeing all in favor, no opposed?
I was just going to ask, does it return to this committee or does it return to city council?
Well, I think we should allow, or have a conversation with Councilor Griffin, and then I don't necessarily see it having to come back here. I think if we present it to Councilor Griffin, then he can quarterback it back to the city council, right?
I guess it would be up to him.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess it would be up to Councilor Griffin.
If he wants to come in, he can. If he doesn't want to,
Can you
that's
amend
fine.
that, amend the motion? Because you
Well,
did
we
say
can keep
refer
it,
it back to the committee.
we can keep it, I mean, whether it comes back or not, we can say it's referred back, but if we feel like it doesn't need to come back,
Okay.
then we'll just bring it to council.
Sure. 4-0.
4-0, yep.
Anything
you very
else,
much.
gentlemen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, any other business?
There's nothing else on the agenda. I have been informed by Council Resnick that the open item, the third item, is items that are, you know, of interest to the committee, is not appropriate under the Open Meetings Act. So,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
oh,
All
that's
in
not me.
favor? Okay, we are adjourned.